Well, Mark, I thanks for helping my project. And before we get started, maybe you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
My name is Mark Cameron. I'm a computer engineer. I work currently with Hewlett Packard as a program manager, and that's probably it. I guess I uh, I enjoy doing outdoor stuff, but we can't do that right now with the COVID-19 situation. So, hoping hoping for better days ahead in the not too distant future.
There was this organization in Europe. They didn't, I don't think they were really all that credible, but they
Mhm.
wanted to send people to Mars on one-way trips, and they had this worldwide kind of push to find people who would be interested in that. And they claimed that they had like tens of thousands of people sign up to go on a one-way trip to Mars. And part of that trip would have been 6 months inside of a small spaceship on the way there. Not to mention, you're pretty much going to be in a spacesuit or a small habitat whenever you're there. I'm wondering if this COVID-19 situation and the quarantine made a lot of people reconsider if that was really something they would be interested in doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. But you say what was a one-way trip?
It was an organization called Mars One.
Mm-hmm.
The organization itself didn't really have anything more than a marketing department,
Mm-hmm.
so it was really pretty much not a serious organization. But
Okay.
kind of like the interesting part is how many people they claim expressed interest in taking such a journey.
Right.
But right before we were talking about the world's going to be a different place after this COVID-19. Um, how, in what way do you think it'll be different?
I think we're going to become more. I think it's going to accelerate the technological pace. It's forced in that direction in terms of how we're communicating, how we think about things. We've been forced to be operating more outside of the box, doing things that we may be thinking about, but we probably didn't plan to do. So that's one side of it. Another side of it is from a social standpoint, I think there are going to be changes too, because this situation has forced everybody really to be on a level playing field. Because no matter how much money you have or don't have, when it comes to eating, surviving day to day, having the essentials, um, everybody's pretty much in the same position. Also, it helps us to realize that the frontline workers are very important to our day-to-day existence. So how we look at things, I think, will be a little bit different. Some people think that, well, that's just short term, but I think it's more long term because I think this situation and other situations too, can possibly come up that we're not looking at right now. So I think technology, um, the social interaction, those are two key areas I think that'll be critical going forward. And companies that are in that loop, like say a Facebook, for example, um, I think probably are poised well, going into that stage. From an HP standpoint, I think we're also poised well. And from a technology standpoint, I think on the consumer side, relative to 3D printing, this entire process has really, I think, accelerated the process. So whereas previously the pace for 3D printing was a little bit slower than anticipated initially. I think it's going to really pick up because a lot of people now realize how to use 3D printers and what they can produce, and the market acceptance of these items is is a real acceptance now, whereas before it was, well, we don't necessarily need to do that, but now it's at least accepted. So I think a lot of technological differences are going to continue. I don't think that pace will slow down. And then on the social side, I think how we interact will continue. It'll be interesting to see how things develop over the next year and a half. Obviously, the vaccine is important. I think that's another area to pharmaceutical and medical. That's another area where there are going to be some changes. I don't know exactly how they'll um, unfold, but there will be changes there because that's an essential service, and um, there, how as we can see, right, how we're how the pharmaceutical products are being developed. The pricing of pharmaceuticals is going to be another area. Medical insurance. So overall, I think that's another area too that'll have be impacted. But I think technology will also play a key role in that process.
Do you think handshaking is going to go away?
That's a good question. I think the answer to that is probably no. I think no, it's not going to go away. I think um, I think I think how we relate to each other will be different. So I think or I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that there'll probably be more respect for each other. So I don't think it will go away, but I think it'll be a process whereby just even right now. So the whole idea behind, in my opinion, at least behind the mask, use wearing a mask, for example, is respect and caring about the other person. I think that's what it's all about. Society as a whole right now, um, in general, had not been very caring or respectful, I think. So this has kind of forced that topic onto the table. So I think it's a evolving process, but I think no, I think handshaking will exist. I think um, uh, it may not be as superficial as it has been, though. I think it may be more of a personal uh, gesture, meaning to someone that you respect or someone that you have a closer confidence in.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, one other part that I think is related to this that we forget about sometimes is back in December of 2019, there was a dentist in Wuhan, China, who had noticed something going wrong with his patients. And he was talking to his fellow medical people about, hey, I think something's going on. And, from what I understand, is like the state police said, hey, if you keep doing this, we're going to put you in jail. You need to stop causing panic. And when he died, I think in February from COVID-19, there's a big outcry in China. And then they had the big crackdown after that to do the social distancing and everything, which I think also helped them control sort of the response to, um, the way that he was treated and the way the information was withheld from them. But, it makes you wonder, freedom of speech and freedom of press, having those for people in China might obviously had a big impact on us. You couldn't have independent organizations go in there and verify and report on things, and you have like the great firewall of China, kind of controlling what information's there. But what are your thoughts on that?
So I think that's tricky. That's a tricky subject. I think you look at even our situation here in the U.S. in terms of freedom of expression, freedom of the press. Uh, I think that especially when you look at social media. So the folks who are clamoring for freedom of speech will tend to um, not allow you to have your opinion. You know, if your opinion differs from theirs, right?
Hmm.
And then also for on the other side too, it's the same thing. You know, so both sides say, you know, it becomes a political issue, and when it doesn't have to be political, but it inevitably becomes a political issue. But when they talk about freedom of expression, um, there are very few groups that really allow the opportunity for freedom of expression, right? What they want is really you to be free to express the same views that they're expressing, you know. So I think that that's one point. I think also in from a China standpoint, I think that it's a controlled environment, as we know, and ours tends to be more towards the other end of the spectrum. But I think our society as it is will also evolve too, and I think it will also change. Um, I think how we look at things will be a little bit different because I think ultimately we can't I think ultimately we can't ultimately I think exist long term as a nation um, with the approach of just providing lip service to these things like freedom of expression, media. You know, for example, one group would say from a political standpoint, this is the media, that's not the media. And from a journalistic standpoint, journalism to a great extent is out the door. You know, I think um, the way that it is, it's really um, entertainment. Um, it's really vocalizing viewpoints. That's really what's communicated under the guise of journalism. Um, I think I think we hit the peak with the election of our current president in terms of the opportunities probably for um, individuals who are gaining popularity or um, gain the respect just because of being popular or because they're able to showcase themselves. So I think over time that probably will not be as effective. Um, going forward, I think we'll be looking for more meaningful people who have something more tangible to say rather than just superficial communication. I think that's probably what will change more so as we go forward. Because even if you look from a political standpoint on both sides, they both do the same thing in terms of not really having a lot of meat and potatoes to their argument or their discussion. So when you have someone different who's not in the political sphere currently speak about the topic, it's a totally different type of conversation. When they're not trying to be entertaining or they're not trying to communicate just for entertainment purposes. They're really trying to help. They're trying to respect. They're trying to communicate, and whoever is speaking with them tend to be forced to have more of a journalistic type of approach. So I think overall, I think it's an evolving process. I think China has to change how they do things, not be as controlling. I think on our side, not that we have to be more controlling, but the process is going to change also, where that controlling element will come from the people. I think the population as a whole will demand over time more responsibility from our leaders and not just be looking for superficial type of discussions because ultimately the situation is we have a lot of very difficult decisions that have to be made as we move forward. And these are really complex matters, and it's not really just a very casual type approach that will help to resolve these issues.
Well, that's definitely a very optimistic way of looking at our fellow citizens. So I hope it turns out to be the case.
Yeah, and I think so. I think, but it takes time, though. I think it evolves over a period of time, because um, I think there are two sides to it. So one side is that if you are if you're born here in general, I think in general, to a great extent, you don't necessarily realize what you have. So
100%.
right. So I think you can see that probably like in your conversations with in-laws, your in-laws, right, who may or may not be necessarily born here, or they have a lot of family in India. They have a different perspective. And
They they do, but I see like two edges to it. On one hand, they really appreciate like the goods and services available and kind of the clean streets and education opportunities and sort of like the ability to generate wealth. But on the other side of it, um, you know, I think there's always been, I think earlier, I think it's disappeared in the past few generations. There was always a sense of there's something wrong with society. It was my responsibility to go and fix it, either by getting government to fix it, and actually be activism, and or creating like a nonprofit, or you know, uh, doing something about it. But I think the entrepreneurial spirit is not something that's it's like we need to figure out some way to reinvigorate that, get people to actually go and say, I think this would be a good idea, and them actually personally take it on to organize other people around that idea to make it happen. And it's just, I mean, I think you're right in the sense that I have some friends who grew up in very modest, rough situations in India and other countries, and they don't expect anybody to give them anything. And they're like, give me a chance, I can make it work. And then they come over here and they become, millionaires because they're like, wow, you're saying I can set up a business and sell stuff to people and people buy it, and I don't have to worry about paying off government officials because of corruption, or worry about local crime lords come by and mess up my business, or you know
yeah, yeah. I mean, even from the standpoint of well, there are different angles. I think I agree with what you just said. I mean, there are different angles to look at it, and I don't necessarily mean it that if you're born here, you don't see these opportunities, right? But I think my main focus was really on people here who are born here but are disenfranchised, right?
Mhm.
Or they maybe just say they're poor, they may be poor people, right? And so I think one of the key points here is that they need education. I think we need to have a minimum level of education so that a lot of these folks can realize this opportunity. Because if they had the education, then they'll I think in general they'll exercise the initiative to do a lot of these things, and um, utilize their skills, and be more progressive. And consequently, they'll be an asset to our society instead of a liability or a cost. So I think in general, that's an area of opportunity that that you can look at it with um, if you look at it with, say, the Hispanic community, then part of it is cultural too. So you look at the Hispanic community, look at the Black community. Um, it's different from the Indian community or the Asian community, the Chinese community, right? In terms of how culturally they operate, how they work together as a family, what their aspirations are. Um, so, like in an Indian community or an Asian community, it's normal, right, for for the kids to be or the parents to aspire for their kids to be doctors, right?
Hmm.
That doesn't happen so much in the Black community or Hispanic community, as an example. But that's just an idea there.
Well,
But
and
I
on
think,
top of that, the people in the Indian community, they have relatives or friends of relatives that are doctors that they could go to and say, how do I become a
right,
doctor? What's required? A lot of people in the Black or Hispanic communities or other communities, you know, they don't really have that access to
right,
show them.
right. And then the thing is that it's a spectrum, right? So let's say on the highest point is doctor, right?
Hmm.
But you have all these people along the way who don't make it to be a doctor, but they'll be something else. They may be a nurse,
Or a
or
veterinarian.
vet, whomever, optician, optometrist, but they play a valuable role. They'll play a valuable role in the community, you know. Um, so whereas with let's say the Black community or the Hispanic community, um, their aspirations are different, right? And so consequently, on the spectrum, you tend to have a lot more on the lower end of the spectrum where they need a lot of services and they need a lot of financial help from the government, and that makes the process more difficult. And like you said, going talking about control and so forth, then these people, because of that situation, are in a position where they're more easily controlled, oftentimes by their own race, because those who have the opportunity will you know will oftentimes act as predators, um, on their own people. So I think there's just a lot of work to be done there, and but um, I think that the education, when I say poor people, it's even for poor people living here too, right? Because as we know a lot of people that you've come across, say in Tomball, right? And they've never left Tomball, so they only have the perspective of from a Tomball standpoint. This is the world. This is how things should be. So um, so culturally they have that. Then you have people who also, so they need to be educated. Travel is a good way of educating people, but I think that if they have the opportunity from a technological standpoint to learn, I think that'll be huge. Education will be huge too, so that we can help people have the ability to have different viewpoints, be willing to listen to other people, respect people, understand other people better. And in so doing, I think we can just lift the level of understanding of our population as a whole. And in so doing, it'll help us to move the process along, because I think ultimately right now we probably have been in a stationary type of mode of operation, and you tend to have people have stuff, people don't have stuff. Everybody does their own routine. So this whole COVID-19 shakeup has really forced people to adjust to the environment, and hopefully we'll come out of this experience with better thinking, better way of approaching others from a social standpoint, be better able to use technology to advance our own well-being as well as the well-being of others.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I should tell you a little bit about this project I have. So, I work from home. So social distancing was a big thing for me for the last 5 years because working from home, you could easily just only interact with your family members. So this kind of COVID-19 quarantine situation doesn't feel that too dissimilar to my normal life. So I'm really fascinated by space exploration, and it really, the idea of humanity going into space and, you know, exploring and learning new things, and learning to use the resources of space to better Earth, and, eventually creating that foundation so that we're actually, uh, branching out into the rest of the universe is something that's really inspiring to me. And NASA is planning to land people on the moon again in 2024. And I thought it'd be kind of neat to use that as a framework to kind of cure my own social distancing problem by forcing me to get out there and talk to at least one person every single day. I'm, and before the COVID-19 thing, I required that all the interviews be in person. So I would go to like Starbucks or to the mall, or meet up with somebody to like interview them in person. I've interviewed people on like the bus and the train and the airplane and, at the airport and all this other good stuff. I don't think that's a good recommendation now to just go up to random people and ask them for
Right,
an interview.
right.
Um, but I was wondering, first of all, did you know that NASA was planning to send people back to the moon in 2024?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And how did you find out about it?
Um, well, I think it was part of the I think that part of the communication from the administration, the current administration, um, as one of the goals set by the administration. Yeah.
Yeah, last year about this time, Mike Pence, or actually earlier in the year, I think it was like February of 2019, Mike Pence had the National Space Council come together, and he stated that as being a policy. And then even a lot of stuff was mentioned in the State of the Union address this year, but there was a little bit about Artemis and going to the moon and us being a
Right.
frontier society. Um, well, I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a good thing to do, a waste of money? I mean, like, where does it fit in your picture of the world
I,
and things we
I,
do?
I think it's a good thing to do. I think as we learn from the Apollo program, I think there was a lot of technological advances that were derived from the program and that approach. So I think from that standpoint, I think it's goodness. I think it's also an opportunity to unite the country towards a common goal. And I think there's probably no that value is really is really quite it's quite an impressive value, I think, to really unite folks towards a goal, having the technological advances all in one shot. You know, um, I think I think just being on the moon by itself, I don't think that's a big deal by itself, right? But I think everything that comes with it, I think, is good. I think it also helps to encourage other space exploration, which probably makes more sense than going back to the moon. So I think there are lots of benefits with the approach, and I'm a supporter of that.
How do you think it's, I mean, so right now, actually just last Thursday, NASA announced that they had selected three companies, actually teams of companies, Blue Origin, Dynetics, and SpaceX, to develop a lander to land on the moon. And the idea is that these companies would develop their own sort of way of landing people on the moon, and then NASA would just pay them to sort of transport their astronauts.
Right.
Um, and you know, some people see this as being kind of like a really innovative thing because it's allowing these teams to sort of take the free market approach, and you know, as opposed to the traditional governmental contracting approach. But there are people in Congress who really want like the government to go about the old approach of selecting a government contractor, give them a whole bunch of requirements, they build it based upon those requirements, and um, that's sort of what was done during the Apollo program. And I was wondering if you felt like, I mean, Do you think either one of those approaches is better, or how would you
Yeah,
contrast them?
I support a free market approach. I think that's really what makes sense. I think again, um, I think technology is important, and I think we'll see by having that approach. I think we'll see um, probably ultimately better product. You know, I think we'll see maybe better coordination also. So I think the free market approach is the better way of doing it. I mean, we can look at it even say currently from a vaccine standpoint, right? So if we use the approach of um, um, you know the old approach, I think it'll take obviously much longer for us to get a vaccine. It's probably going to cost us a lot more also, right, to get a vaccine. So I think the same thing will happen. It'll probably take longer for us to we probably won't meet the 2024 schedule, and it's probably going to be costing us a lot more, to come up with the right aircraft to get there.
And are you familiar with SpaceX and what they've been up to?
No, I mean I know of SpaceX, but I don't know what has been their objective or their schedule, and what it is exactly that they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so the founder of SpaceX, Elon Musk, he's also the CEO of Tesla.
Right.
His big thing is about creating a city on Mars and creating the capability to transport enough materials and people to make that happen. So he started out with just a simple rocket to launch satellites. And normally, when you launch a rocket, you throw away the entire thing and rebuild the entire thing. So every rocket launch, costs 100 million plus, right? Because you have to rebuild the entire rocket. But he made it so that the first stage re-lands, they refurbish it, refuel it, and launch it again. Uh, he's done that as many as like 5 times so far, which means that the cost of building that rocket now gets spread out over 5 flights instead of one. And he thinks he could do it for many more times than that. And this allowed for him to be lower cost than a lot of other people, so much so that the Russians, who are also launching satellites for people, are accusing SpaceX of doing what is it, dumping of launch services on the market, just to arbitrarily drive them out of business. So that's kind of interesting. But he also has a Starlink, which is it's going to be a constellation of thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit that will provide high bandwidth any place in the world. Um, so you get like, maybe gigabit, uh, internet. Um, if you're in the middle of the ocean, middle of Latin America, middle of Africa, it doesn't matter. And then the other big thing is in Boca Chica, Texas, which is right next to Brownsville. He's working on building this huge rocket that'll be 100% reusable, and he's building a factory that can that he wants to be able to produce 2 of these a week. And I, he's actually like building test rockets right now, and there's people that are providing like real-time video and analysis and everything about what he's doing. It's just really kind of amazing to see that. I think it's going to be like the 747 of rockets, kind of going
Yeah,
from,
that's good.
yeah. So it could be really, really neat. Um, yeah, I was, so I guess the other question is, if it became safe and affordable, would you have an interest in going to space yourself?
Yeah, space, yes. Mars, I'm not sure about Mars, but space, yes. Yeah, I think so it depends on people, right? So from my standpoint, I'm not so much a pioneer. I'm looking at that more. For me, it's a bit more of an experience or something recreational. I'm not looking at it from a more of a pioneer standpoint. Other people maybe, are more interested in it from a pioneer standpoint, where they want to be the leading edge. So it's just like with phones or PCs. I don't need to have the best one or to be in line to get the latest one being released. Um, I look at it more as a functional commodity or just the general usage.
And at one point in time, we had like this big frontier with lots of people setting up farms and the real frontier life and what have you. And I don't know of a place in the world where that really exists on any scale. Um, and I get the sense that there's really not that much frontier people in the world today. And I was wondering, it, from your standpoint, have you seen any like significant group of people who would be pioneers and frontier people?
I think I don't know if that's true because I think we probably have a lot of frontier people, but they may be just focused on other things, right, or other areas. So um, so I think it exists, but I think it's just different. So they'll focus on other areas of opportunity, other interests that they may have. Um, so let's say, for example, people who are stocking up on food and thinking about where to live because of the end of the world. You know,
Hmm.
they're frontiersmen, frontierswomen, but that's just their approach, for what they think as being significant. So similarly to on just even a day-to-day basis, people who have um, you know um, non-profit organizations, or even say yourself, right? So I think you'd be classified also in that in that category too, for what
Definitely
you've done.
non-profit, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of what you're doing right now, right? I mean, that's it's really would fall into that category, you know. So me, on the other hand, I'm more of the type of person that would tend to more replicate. I'll do a good job of replicating something rather than look at it from that approach.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be difficult having everybody being frontiers people changing lives and then nobody to kind of, you know, uh,
Right,
build on that. Yeah. So that's,
right, right, right.
well, I know I told you I'll only take 15 minutes. I've already doubled that. Uh,
No,
so,
that's
uh,
okay.
but is there any like last comments you wanted to say?
No, I think very interesting discussion. I think it would be interesting to see what kind of feedback you get, generally speaking, about how many people are you going to chat with?
So I was planning to do it every single day through the end of 2024. So
Hmm.
from the day that I began, which is in December of last year, that would be 1,840 people. I have
Okay,
1,702 more people to do. So
okay. So in terms of analysis, do you plan to do analysis, and if so, in what time frame?
I do. I was originally thinking like every 100 days, maybe putting together a summary.
Yeah,
Honestly, though, I've been kind of tied up with other things and haven't had a chance to review the videos and kind of do that. So now it's just trying to keep with the commitment of doing one a day um,
right.
is the challenge. So, but I think it may be very interesting looking at these videos a year or 2 or 3 years after they were made and kind of see
See how,
what
see
happens,
what's
right?
happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. um, because I think the videos as well as the analysis, right, and see from a predictability standpoint how accurate the general group as a whole were, right? Because I think again now it's an interesting time. I think there are a lot of things going on, lots of variables, so it'll be interesting to see how things evolve over time.
Yeah, indeed. I don't think anybody was suspecting that everybody would be locked in their houses in March.
No, I mean, also like I was, um, a friend was selling a donut shop, you know, and I wasn't really thinking about getting into that business, but I really was taking a serious look at it because I had somebody else who's a cook, and he was looking for something to do at that time, and this is back in February timeframe. So this was something that I almost did, you know. It was just because of the coronavirus situation where I didn't do it. So it's just kind of interesting also how something like this has really changed in the past for lots of people.
Yeah, it is. I mean, consider those people that were supposed to graduate this year from high school or college,
Right,
um,
right.
and even like people who were having funerals or weddings during this time.
Yeah,
A lot of people may have postponed kind of those ceremonies. Um,
right. It's very difficult. Yeah. I mean, even for your kids too. Like my stepson, he's at A&M, and all the classes are virtual. And from my perspective, I would tend to think that he wouldn't. It would be easy for him to do it that way, right? It would be a no brainer. But he's having trouble with it because he prefers not to have that approach for his classes. So um, it's interesting how people are reacting to different types of people. Um, so with my stepson Joseph, a lot of the social components are more meaningful to him than I thought,
hmm.
right? As part of the whole college experience. So I thought that's pretty interesting. Fortunately, he's a junior, so he still has one more year come the fall. So his schedule is, hopefully is not too, you know, too majorly impacted.
Yeah, the social aspect is something that's important to my children as well. I know my oldest one, like he likes to go to the gym, which he can't do right now, but
Right,
he's been um, doing a virtual meeting with other people that work out, and they like work out together on the video. So it's like
right,
trying to create a facsimile to that gym experience.
right. Yeah, but these are different things as an example of being creative, right? And that's gonna create other opportunities too. All of these, the different approaches for doing things, will create, additional opportunities. So even virtually. So this past week, I had my first um, virtual medical appointment with my doctor. So that's something too, right? Um, so a lot of these appointments will be done virtually going forward, no matter what happens. You know. So
Oh,
that's a
definitely.
change in how we do things.
I had an infection in my finger from like the nail, and I had gotten it before, and I'm like, I need a course of antibiotics. I don't want to go to the doctor and get exposed to COVID-19, what have you. And I found out my insurance had a virtual doctor option. And between the
Yeah,
time I signed up, saw the doctor, talked through my finger, and got the prescription was a total of 15 minutes.
yeah,
So it's like,
amazing.
why? I know. It's like even if I was planning to go see a doctor, that's going to be my first step. Let's do the virtual doc thing and make sure I'm
Yeah,
heading off in the right direction.
yeah. And there are pros and cons with it, but by doing that, though, the more cases we have that are solved that way, that's cost savings too.
Yeah, and no
You know,
waiting room.
yeah,
Also, the doctor that I
the
see,
overhead.
they don't have to be in Houston. They could be in
No,
Dallas, San Antonio,
yeah,
Austin, any place, really.
yeah, yeah. So a lot less overhead. So it'll be interesting, to see what how things develop.
It will be. Well, Mark,
Yeah.
I guess I better let you go. And thank you so
All
much
right.
for helping me in my project.
Okay, you're welcome. Take care. Take care,
Okay,
Nathan. All
bye
right.
bye.